It's day 22 of the 30-day Talk to Camera Challenge. That means we only have 8 days left, which seems pretty crazy that I've been doing this for 22 days straight. So today, I want to go back to this card. Discern your purpose, discover divine connections, develop and articulate Christ-centered content, and deepen your relationship with God and each other. And I want to focus on discerning your purpose. When I say discerning your purpose, what I'm really saying is discerning God's purpose for our lives. What most people think when they start talking about purpose is they start saying, oh, what do I really enjoy? What are my gifts? And if you want to think about it that way, your gifts for God's purpose. And that's why I have discern your purpose. Not discover, not define, but discern. In Acts chapter 13, verse 36, it says, "For David, after he had served the purpose of God in his own generation, fell asleep and was laid with his fathers and saw corruption," or underwent decay. So it's possible to serve God's purpose. Now it's also possible to reject God's purpose. This is Luke 7, verse 30. It says, "The Pharisees and lawyers rejected God's purpose for themselves, not having been baptized by John the Baptist, John the Immerser, Jesus' cousin." If you guys have seen The Chosen, which I highly suggest you check out, it's Crazy John that I'm talking about. In Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 11, Solomon writes that God has set eternity in our hearts. The way that I take that is that there is this hole inside of each of us. We try to fill with all kinds of stuff. And if we don't have the Christian worldview, we're going to fill that with what's acceptable in our culture. Russell Brand just recently talked about this. When it says in the Old Testament, "Worship no other gods than me," the implication he offers is that we are a species that worships. And if you do not access the divine, we will worship the mundane, we will worship the profane, we will worship our own identity, we will worship our belongings, we will worship the template laid before us by the culture to get us distracted and relatively dumb. I really appreciate his take on this. We need to be careful when we start talking about defining our purpose or even discovering our purpose. Because if we're not doing this in alignment with what God has in store for us, His purpose for us, we could be heading down a completely wrong road and think we're doing right because it feels right, it feels good. Apart from God, we really don't know our purpose. Recently, John Lennox did an interview with Jordan Peterson, and I highly suggest you check it out. I'll actually put it in the description. But what John said is that, today the young people are pressured to look inside themselves for the answers. Apart from God, we don't have the answers. There is something bigger. This is what John said. There is something bigger. There is something more than the materialists are putting forth as the answer. There is something bigger, and it's outside of us. In that same interview, Jordan Peterson had this insight about the first temptation, the forbidden fruit, eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And his take is that the devil was offering them the opportunity to define their own morality, their own good and evil, versus what God says good and evil is. I was actually watching another YouTube video called The Wise Disciple. He actually quotes Genesis 6:5, and I think this is key. It says, "The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually." If we are subjectively choosing good and evil, then it's going to lead to bad places. And this started way at the beginning. This is not anything new for us today. Dave Rubin did an interview with Weinstein. He's an atheist. Well, I don't know if he's an atheist. He's an evolutionist. I'll say that. And he said the new atheists destroyed a set of protections that stopped our civilization from degrading into a tribal chaos of sorts. Peterson talks about Nietzsche. Now, he wasn't making a theological statement. Instead, he's talking about this vacuum, the diminishing influence of religion, the rise of scientific rationalism. It was going to erode the foundations of morality. And that's exactly what happened. When we have no objective morality, then it's going to lead to Nazi Germany, Hitler, Stalin, that end up killing hundreds of millions of people in the 20th century. When we remove God, then we have to have a substitution. Usually what ends up happening is things turn to chaos, things get real messy, and all of a sudden people want order at any cost. And that's when you get things like totalitarianism. That's when the bad guys can come in and take over. What are we going to do if we have this subjective morality? Well, people talk about this idea of a social contract. We're going to get all these people together. We're going to agree what is right and wrong. We're going to focus on human flourishing as the basis of what we're going to say is moral and not moral. When you don't have an objective morality, something beyond us, then anything goes. This seems pretty deep when we just want to talk about our purpose, but it is deep because it can be quite dangerous. It really behooves us to start with God's idea of His purpose for us at the beginning, and then align our gifts with that. Romans 8:29 said, "For those whom He foreknew, He also predestined to become conformed to the image of His Son, so that He would be the firstborn among many brethren." God's purpose for us is that we would be conformed to the image of His Son, first and foremost. Now, it says when Jesus came, He came to seek and to save that which was lost. And so His purpose, seek and save the lost. And if we're to be conformed to His image, then our purpose, seek and save the lost. See? The whole idea of today's discussion is each of us is unique. Each of us has our own gifts. Each of us has our own talents. And it's using those gifts and those talents ultimately for God's purpose, so that we can, like David did, that we can accomplish God's purpose in our generation. How awesome is that? So I realize that this is a pretty deep discussion when all I wanted to talk about was our purpose. But our purpose is big. Our why is big. It's not a trivial thing. So I want to give it the weightiness that it actually has. This isn't going to be the last time I talk about this for sure. Day 22, 8 days left. Keep seeking the Lord's face. God bless.